The Vethon filed it under noise. I know, because I was there when Sovarath Neil signed the classification. Third tier from the left in the signals review chamber. Deep space relay post Oreth Cal. Outer survey margin. Somewhere in the long, quiet stretch between the Keth corridor and nothing worth naming. Neil held my journal, the one I'd been maintaining for 11 months by then, at a distance that suggested it might be contagious, and read the cover notation aloud in the flat, three-tone Vethan register that their translator rendered as approximately neutral, but which I had come to understand meant something closer to politely appalled. Subband signal record, organic resonance pattern, Sector 9, Channel 41, duration, 11 months, analyst, Vael, J, human, classification requested. He set it down. He did not look at me. Biological noise artifact, suboperational, no intelligence threshold. Classification, ambient interference, non-monitored band. He signed the form. He filed the form. He left the room. I went back to the console and kept logging. That is the whole story, more or less. Everything else is just the part where it turned out I was right. The Vetheon are not cruel. I want to be clear about that, because what follows could be read that way and it wasn't. Neil was not dismissing me out of contempt. He was dismissing me out of certainty, which is a different thing entirely, and, in my experience, considerably harder to argue with. The Vethon Signals course had classified the organic resonance band as ambient interference 47 years before I was born. It was in their institutional baseline. Their monitoring arrays did not even sample below channel 50. The hardware simply did not look there. It had been that way for 2 generations of Vethon Signals officers, and the idea that a human with a handwritten journal was going to find something their calibrated instruments had not considered looking for was, from where Neil was standing, not an idea at all. It was a category error. You do not submit classification requests for things that cannot, by definition, contain anything worth classifying. I understood his position. I disagreed with it, but I understood it. The frequency had come in first on my 7th night at the post. I was running a manual wide-spectrum check, something I'd been trained to do, and the Vethon considered redundant given the array coverage, and there it was, sitting quietly in the 41st channel, below the official monitoring floor, faint, patterned. The kind of pattern that does not occur in undirected interference because undirected interference doesn't care about interval timing, and whatever was producing this very much did. Every 4 hours, 17 seconds, same duration each time, same harmonic substructure under the surface frequency, like a secondary key hidden inside the primary one, consistent across every window I checked. I logged it. I noted the interval, the duration, the substructure. I noted the date, the time to the second, and the channel. I set an alarm for 3 hours and 50 minutes, so I would be at the console when the next window came in. It came in. Same interval. I logged that too. I went to bed. By month 3, I had 6 notebooks. By month 7-9, the Vethon Signals team became, over that period, aware that I was logging something, in the way that a person becomes aware there is a persistent sound in the next room that they have collectively elected not to investigate. When I passed the team station in the corridor, Sov Arath Neil's junior officer, Veth Oriel Koss, would sometimes glance at whichever notebook I was carrying, with the expression of someone watching a colleague spend considerable effort arranging furniture in a room that did not exist. It was not hostile. It was the particular patient kindness that very competent people extend to those they have quietly stopped expecting to produce anything useful. Neil reviewed my first formal request for array attention in month 5. He reviewed it in the sense that he read the summary, signed the denial, and returned the documents in under 4 minutes, with a notation that read, in translation, classification review, unnecessary, prior determination standing, no new analytical basis demonstrated. He filed it in a physical folder he labeled, in Vethamon, something that translated as supplemental ambient record keeping, for reference. I noted this in Notebook 7 and kept logging. In month 8, I was invited to sit in on the quarterly signals review. I believe the invitation was extended as a courtesy, the same way you might let a new hire attend a meeting, so they feel included before you return to doing things without them. I sat in the 3rd row and listened while Koss presented the quarterly monitoring summary. He referenced my subband observations once, In the context of a slide about non-array data sources, under a heading I was not able to read in full, but which the translator rendered as something approximately equivalent to non-analytic supplemental inputs, not incorporated. The slide was on the screen for perhaps 8 seconds. Month 11. Review Chamber. The Journal at Arm's Length. Biological Noise Artifact. Month 12. I logged entry 1406. Month 13. The frequency resolved. I don't mean it got stronger, I mean it differentiated. The substructure sharpened across 4 consecutive logging windows, and produced a second pattern nested inside the first, a slower rhythm beneath the faster one, consistent and deliberate in the way that only intentional transmission is. When I ran the second pattern against the Vetha Navigational Distress Encoding Library that I had downloaded to my personal reference system 8 months earlier, on the grounds that it seemed like the sort of thing to have on hand, it matched. Not approximately, not in the general shape of things. Exactly, character for character, against the biological resonance distress encoding specified in the Vethanon Deep Survey Vessel Charter from 60 years prior, back when vessels were still routinely equipped with organic band reserve emitters, before the 47-year-old decision to reclassify that band as ambient noise had quietly made the encoding functionally obsolete. The survey vessel Kethoron's Reach had been missing for 14 months. She had been declared lost with all hands in month 9 of her absence, following a failed recovery search that had used every standard monitoring band the Vethoron signals infrastructure maintained, and found nothing, because it had not looked in the one place the signal was. The crew list had been archived. The vessel had been formally struck from the active registry. There had been a service held at Fleet Command. I wrote the encoding match-up cleanly, cited the charter specification, referenced the substructure log by notebook number and entry, noted the 14-month overlap between the vessel's disappearance and the first logged instance of the pattern. I put it in a standard communications packet and sent it to Neil's station at 7 in the morning, station time, with a read receipt requested. He read it at 7:42. I know because the receipt came back at 7:42, and then nothing happened for 11 minutes, and then the array came online at channel 41 for the first time in the documented history of relay post-Oreth Koal. The vessel was 2.3 light hours out, transmitting on a reserve biological resonance emitter because their primary array had failed in month 2 of being missing, and the crew had switched to backup systems that the monitoring infrastructure had, technically, stopped listening for before most of them were born. They had been transmitting every 4 hours for over a year. The signal had been there the entire time. All 18 crew members, alive. The Vethon Search and Recovery Division reached them in 6 days. The post filed an amended monitoring protocol the following week, authorizing channel 41 through 49 as mandatory inclusions in standard sweep coverage, no exception, effective immediately. Neil submitted the amendment himself. I saw it come through the shared documentation system. He did not mention the journals. He did not mention the 11 months, or the quarterly review, or the folder labeled Supplemental Ambient Record Keeping. The amendment cited the amended charter baseline and listed the technical justification cleanly. I didn't expect him to. He was a careful, precise officer who had followed his institutional baseline exactly as it was designed to be followed, and the baseline had been wrong for 47 years before I arrived, and it would have stayed wrong, quietly and completely, if I had not been the sort of person who finds a pattern at 7 in the evening and writes it down every 4 hours for a year, because the alternative, deciding it's probably nothing and going to bed, had never, in my experience, actually worked out to be nothing. Koss stopped me in the corridor the following morning. He looked at the notebook I was carrying, number 15 by then, for a moment longer than he had before. He didn't say anything. He moved on. I went back to the console and wrote entry 1458. The frequency was still there. It always had been. I kept logging.